All right, so folks, if you could come on into the sanctuary for our sort of our big three here. So I think, as many of you have already sort of put together, so much of the kind of intellectual engine that Paul has been kind of weaving and moving around has been the work of Jonathan and John. So we decided it would be great to sort of get you three on a stage and maybe a sort of, you've heard a bunch of things, you've said a bunch of things. Paul, you have some ideas that might kind of kick us off here, and I'm here in a case of emergencies. That's it. So.
If we run out of things to say, right?
Lows. Anyway.
Well, how long do we go? The clock's there?
I can't tell you that information.
Okay, about an hour, the three of us, and then Q&A. Last night, when you ever do a conference like this, there's a moment that grabs all of us, or one of us. And last night, John, your proclamation of not using LLMs. Now, hang on. It's not. One of the things I thought of immediately was, and don't take this wrong. Wow, I've heard much of my life. I've heard fundamentalists make broad. And you got to understand. This is not a dig.
I'll just go ahead and leave now because.
But this gets to, I think, a very interesting, serious issue civilizationally. We have, at ARC, for example, and here too, we have Orthodox priests in full regalia. As opposed to, I'm a Protestant, I don't wear a collar. We have the Benedict option. We talked about raising children in a world of screens and people deciding to homeschool. And a question here is, with the AI onslaught, the technological onslaught, what kind of world are we heading into? In our estuary group, we talked a little bit about, you have unification, then you have fragmentation, hopefully again in order to unify. And so part of my question is if we are heading into a period of Benedict option communities, neo-techno fundamentalists who say, I will not use this device, or when you see the Amish or the Mennonites walking with I wonder if that's what we will need to survive the meaning crisis, the poly crisis, the meta crisis, if we are going to see sort of a destruction of public culture in hopes of a resurrection.
I guess I should answer first. First of all, my comparison was LLMs are like smoking cigarettes. That they're addictive and they're bad for you. I strongly hope that people still continue to do scientific work on AI. My criticism, one of my deepest criticisms of the LLMs, is they were not driven by scientific research. Right? It was an uncoupling of technology from science in a way that I think is very dangerous. Although I do find it very amusing, the irony of me becoming a kind of fundamentalist. That was good, Paul. I think so. I'm asking people to not identify the AGI project with the LLMs because I think it's becoming increasingly clear, and I think this is like, from a scientific point of view, that the LLMs are not going to get us to AGI. And so we shouldn't attach too much to them as to what AGI might look like. Now, they're going to be around, and we should talk about them. And so I'm not censoring and saying, don't talk about the LLMs. But we should understand that if AGI is coming, it's going to be different than the LLMs. Now, as a society, we may not go down that road. We may just choose to pump out bigger and faster LLMs because lots of people can make money. But I think the project of AGI shouldn't be identified with LLMs. Now, that being said, I think it's reasonable to consider the possibility that those things that we have hung our identity on since the advent of modernity, which is our computational capacity to technically manipulate propositional information, and that is what has increasingly been valorized, and many people's profession, at least in part, has that as what they do. That's going away. If your identity is, so just speak, if you think that can't possibly happen, the original computers were people. Before the machines roll out, there were people in organizations. There was a floor filled with people, and they were the computers. When you needed computation done, you sent it down there, right? And we don't have those people anymore because we have the machines. In a similar way, a lot of things are going to disappear that were central to how we understood what it was to be a human being or to be some part of a professional class. And I know that's unpleasant news, but anything that involves people basically doing large amounts of data compression is going to disappear, because very soon what's called the price of inference, I don't like that name because I don't think these machines are currently doing inference, but that's a philosophical issue that none of you care about. Or maybe you do, but it's not relevant here, right? But the price of inference by these machines is going to drop below what it is for human beings to do it, like it did what happened with the original computers. And then whatever we might think about it ethically, it's just going to shift. Now what that means, I guess this will make me sound even more like a fundamentalist. And I say this provocatively, and it's intended to be provocative. The science of the future is theology. Wait. Because you might not like it after a couple minutes. Just see. Okay. What I mean by that is people are going to increasingly, individually and collectively, have to find the source of human identity, selfhood, personhood, in those aspects of what we are that are non-propositional. Our ineffable embodiment and embeddedness in the world, and our ineffable relationship to ultimacy. And as I tried to argue yesterday, that is a spiritual dimension. And so theology has been the discipline that has tried to give us the logos of the theos, of the spirits, of the gods. And we're going to have to try and understand what does that access mean, because the way we have understood human beings, especially since modernity, is, well, what have they calculated, or what kind of calculations do they run? Now I know we've had art and the romantics, but I'm trying to talk about the culture sort of in terms of its central momentum. Now, that being said, so that's the part you would like to, maybe you wanted to clap for. Okay, I wasn't fishing for applause. Theology is the science of the future, but it's going to be a different theology than we've known. Okay? You didn't clap then. Because, right, part of what that shift means is we're going to have to be taking into account, and I'm going to use a technical word because I want to give a lot of oomph to the word, to what I'm going to say. We're talking about new ontologies. That's new structures of how things can be. Now, you use these terms, or you hear them a lot, but I want you to hear them with that extra oomph. We now have the virtual, we now have the artificial, and it doesn't just mean fake anymore, like AI, and we have the cyborg. And if you don't think you're a cyborg, lose your phone for 2 days. Okay? Remember when the Borg were the evil people? Star Trek? The Borg, the Borg. We're all Borgs. Okay. What does it mean? What would it mean if that got tighter? Just to give it a theological spin, and then Jonathan can get angry at me.
Yes.
What it would mean if that relationship got tighter and you were a cyborg? What would it mean to save that individual? What does that mean now? And I mean religiously save them. What does that mean now? What does it mean when a person's identity bleeds into their virtual avatar? And that avatar bleeds into them. And if you don't think that's happening, you need to read some of my email. What does it mean to save that person? Bring them to enlightenment. That's what I mean. Theology is going to be the science of the future, but it's not going to be the theology that we've been familiar with because we're confronting new ontologies. I am not saying that all the theology of the past is useless. I don't believe in utopias. But I'm trying to make a point that I think theology is going to be both central and it's going to go through some kind of a paradigm shift. And by the way, just to be fair to me, theology has repeatedly gone through major paradigm shifts. Like Thomas Aquinas represents a paradigm shift in theology. And if you don't think so, I don't know what to do.
Yeah, that's Jonathan's line. Jonathan's line.
So that's my response. My response is, first of all, don't identify AGI with LLMs. Once you make a broader take on that question, I think theology becomes the science of the future, but it's a theology that's going to go through a paradigm shift. That's my proposal in response.
All right. I think that what we're going through, I think that humanity has been here before. I don't think that what's happening is fundamentally new. I think that the story of the garments of skin, like the imagery of the garments of skin, that if you follow me, I talk about a lot. I think the notion of supplementarity in itself is still valid. What we're talking about is just increasing powerful aspects of supplementarity to the human body. So like you said, I think wearing clothing makes you a cyborg. Like all humans are cyborgs and have always been cyborgs since the fall of Adam and Eve. It's just levels of to what extent our body extends into and our intelligence extends into supplementary technologies. So I think one of the opportunities that the AIs offer and the LLMs offer is a capacity that we're going to have now to rediscover things that were forgotten during the Enlightenment, like what is magic and what is divination and what is there are certain things that the ancients talked about that became completely opaque during the modern time. When you read them, it was like, this is just gibberish. Like, what are they talking about? Like creating these artificial beings that they were invoking spirits into and that they were putting in service of their wills. People would read that and say, just a bunch of crazy people. What were they talking about? And they were doing the things that are happening now. It's just that we forgot those types of sciences. We didn't know what they were about. And now we're going to understand it again. And people are already understanding it again. It's happening not just with AI, it's happening in all kinds of fields where all of a sudden these kind of vertical you were talking about Thomberg, like all these capacities to understand vertical causes and to understand different types of relationships are happening. So I think that we are on the cusp of all. The re-enchantment is the AI is part of the re-enchantment too. People are going to start to see intelligence act on us, are going to start to see spirits act on us in ways that are way clearer than they've ever been able to notice, that are sped up and so easy to perceive. And so we're going to have everything's going to become religious really fast, and the AI is going to participate in that. So whatever it is, like whether it's AGI or LLMs or anything, I think that we're heading towards a very, very dangerous and crazy time, but also a time of great opportunity for people who are able to have wisdom through that time. So I believe in hierarchy. So I think that we have to use LLMs. We just have to use them. We have to use them in a way that is going to help us understand what the hell's going on. Right? So if we don't use them, then we're not going to understand what's happening. We have to be able to use them in a manner that is helping us see what's happening so that we are ready for, as it gets bigger and more powerful, that we're ready to deal with it in the best way that we can. I don't know what that is, but, right, I mean, maybe you probably think that too. Like, you're not saying don't ever use LLMs. You're saying don't use them in a way that makes you addicted to them, that will like become part of your everyday life. But we have to use them, or else we won't know what's going on.
So
or at least some of us have to. Maybe not everyone.
Well,
maybe there could be monks in monasteries that don't ever touch any of it, and there can be a hierarchy. But we need a bunch of warriors on the edges that are knowing what the enemy is doing, so that we have a way to even fight it.
Well, first of all, I want to say two things. One is, use does not imply understanding. How many of you can explain to me how your cell phone works?
No, but you're not technically, you don't need to understand technically what's happening to understand what it's doing phenomenologically to our understanding.
I disagree.
Yeah, okay.
Because these things are technologically designed to hack your phenomenology, so that your phenomenology goes, yes. And so your phenomenology, by design, is not a good guide to what's actually happening in your interaction. Mm-hmm. I mean, the nudging algorithms. You talk about this too on social media, right? Yeah. So it's not a point that's foreign to you.
No. I don't see how. I mean, so like the Amish is a good example. So when I see Amish people and like hardcore Mennonites, like I really admire what they're doing, and I think it's beautiful. And it's similar to when I see monasteries. But what happens is that they have no influence, right? The Amish, at least, like they have no influence. They don't speak into the world. They're isolated. They become like little kernels that are isolated. That's why I talk about hierarchy. That's why I like a monastery better than I like an Amish community, because the monastery in some ways is similar to an Amish community. It's isolated. It tries to participate in a very pure way of being, but then it downstream feeds into people that are in less pure modes of being, and so it can have influence on us, and we can kind of see the model, have to live in our messy world, align ourselves, but then also deal with the messiness of reality. So that's what I tend to think. I think some of us are going to have to use it and have to understand what it's doing to us, have to get a sense. Obviously, we have to protect ourselves and our kids and all of that, because we could have said that about the internet. Like, we could have said it 10 years, 15 years ago about the internet.
Well, right? I kind of think we should have. And secondly, my preamble was, I think people should continue to do a scientific and philosophical investigation into AI. I said we should not stop doing that. I think there should be people who are dedicated to giving deep understanding of this, and I consider myself to belong to that group. And so I'm not proposing that I stop doing that. And I think that would address your concern. We need people who study these things very, very deeply, try to bring it back to a scientific practice and not just a technological engineering feed. in order to tell people this is what these things are doing.
So again, I'm not using LLMs, and I warned them about the internet and they didn't listen. So the fundamentalist theme continues. But let's we are formed, and in many ways we never escape our formation.
So I want to give an example, because Paul Kingsnorth, who I'm sure all of you I love very much, he recently said, if you use LLM, if you use generative AI, you have to know that you are invoking demons, right?
Yep.
All right. And so I was like, okay, Paul. Now, I'm not saying that that's not true. Now, the problem is thinking that you don't already do that all the time, right? That's the problem. It's like this, the way that we engage with the LLM, like the kind of divination type behavior that we do, people have been doing that forever, that kind of behavior. Like people that are very close to me will open up their Bible, right, and then read the first verse that comes, and then they will say that it's a message, right, from whatever, and it's like that's a form of divination. It's like Christian divination. I'm not actually against that. I'm saying that we have behaviors that are divinatory, and we have behaviors that are invoking of certain spirits without knowing it. That's why I think the LLMs are there. They can help us understand what we already do, because it's a hyper version of things that already exist, so that we can learn, or we can relearn how the world works. Does that make sense?
Yes, I understand. And I'm not knocking your fundamentalism here. I agree with some of it. But it's to bring in let's say the post-war consensus. We have been operating as a culture within a container that, again, recently, quick definition of religion, that which is highest and how to get there. And so this post-war consensus has governed in many ways that which is highest and how to get there. And I think you're right when you talk about theology being the science of the future, and the difficulty we're going to have is the competition between the theologies are going to be more direct. Part of the reason when you listen to people and they look at theologians and they say, it doesn't really matter what they're talking about, because, all of these definitions, they're not functional in the culture. And with the end of the post-war consensus, I was picking at Rod over in the green room about this Civil War thing, because I read Rod, Civil War, Civil War, Civil War. But I've got Jordan Hall. Is Jordan still here? All right. I got Jordan Hall in the back of my head in my consciousness Congress, and he kind of helped me see that, well, when we look at the Ukraine war, we definitely see a war. And, we definitely have all these jitters about war with China, but haven't we always we've been at war with China? So what I understand is that I wonder to what degree we will, as a culture, continue to be able to productively work together when theology once again becomes the king of the sciences. Queen. Correct. You're correct. The queen of the sciences. It's correct. It's the queen. And then I'm not saying that there's going to be the red and the blue and the gray, because you have states and border states and all that. But I think you're right. I don't think you're wrong. And I'm not offended by your fundamentalism.
So here's
You're
my
enjoying
wound,
this,
here's the
Paul.
salt.
This is really,
Just
twist,
I think,
twist.
I think this is where, I think in many ways, when we're talking about where this is going, and for me, part of why I value what we've done here is all of these the gods that we're bringing into the little groups are pretty small at this point. And I wonder how they grow, and yeah, so that's what I'm seeing.
So I want to try to respond to both of you, because I don't really I especially don't disagree with you about the way, I mean, that was part of my argument yesterday. What we're going through is making stuff that used to be either ridiculous or, what was your word, gibberish? Now, wow, this is actually rational to think this way again. I agree with that. But I guess my concern is differences of degree become differences of kind, or you fall into fallacious reasoning, right? So, sorry, 1 minute of technical philosophy, okay? Okay, this is called the Sorites paradox. Here's a heap of sand. I remove a grain of sand, it's still a heap. So removing 1 grain of sand from a heap will not turn it into not being a heap, which means I can remove all the grains of sand and there's still a heap there, which is false, right? So differences of degree have to become difference of kind, or you technically fall into a fallacious mode of reasoning. I agree there is, right, there is a continuum between what these are and what has happened. I acknowledge that. And I think that even provides us with what you're doing, which is let's go back and get some resources from there to deal with this. I think that's part of your proposal, at least. But I do think differences of degree become differences of kind, and like the atomic bomb is a weapon, but it's different in kind from any weapons we had before, because no weapons we had before could destroy the entire world. AI is an atomic bomb. It's not a rifle replacing a musket. It's an atomic bomb that's going off right now. That's what I'm trying to say. And so I agree.
Well, if it's an atomic bomb, then why is telling people that they shouldn't use it and make any difference at all in something that is basically so huge that if we don't try to deal with it or engage with it, we're not like it's still going to happen, right? It's still going to, I mean, the atomic bomb is going off now.
Yes.
Right? So what do we?
So first of all, my recommendation was not trying to stop the atomic bomb.
Yeah.
My recommendation was don't bring the radioactive material into your house.
Okay.
Right? which we that was my recommendation. We figured out that this stuff is actually really toxic and we shouldn't be near it on a regular basis. So that's the analogy I'm actually trying to argue for.
Yeah, so you're more arguing for, in terms of personally, what it would do.
That's why I compared it to smoking.
Right. Yeah, smoking or taking a drug or
Yes.
something like that. Yeah.
On the other side, I do think we should. So what I'm worried about is the normalization of AI with using the LLMs. So put aside the personal toxicity issue. Now I'll play in your arena, right? I'm worried about the normalization of this, which is actually masking how powerful it is. So that's a different concern. So that's why I want. Well, I'll change my thing then. Use your LLMs after you get an undergraduate degree in the philosophy of AI.
Right. No. That was sort of the nature of my question. Is like for the three of you, firing up Grok or Chat or what have you, like, I'm not really worried about you three.
You should be.
Well, what I mean is that I think that you all have sort of the exercised muscle of temperance to be able to recognize internally and through your friendships when this thing is colonizing you to such the point where you...
So I'm going to give you some great literature.
Come possess.
Dr. Faustus, the really well-read, really smart guy summons a demon and...
Right, but Faustus has no friends. Right. And so, in other words, yes, I would recommend that the three of you not spend the next 5 months just all in and answering and talking and doing all those sorts of things. My bias is always I am not concerned about me. I don't use it.
Okay, let's make it more
but
dangerous.
my kids.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to make it more dangerous. This AGI is going. You're going to have friends that are not people. It can make that right now. Yeah. It can make that right now. You'll be. There's a good chance that some of you are talking to somebody on the internet that is not a person, and you don't know it. And that is going to increase suddenly and significantly. So the difference is these AIs can give you friends.
Yeah, I agree.
But the not my kids is really important. Because again, back to the question yesterday about raising kids, we are going to see siloed communities of AI fundamentalists on both sides.
And you know where one of those siloed community is? Silicon Valley. Because the people that make these machines isolate their kids from the tech. Because they know. Because they know. That is a growing phenomenon.
Yes. But now if we take this back and we understand, we had a great question about fundamentalism. Because that's kind of what I'm getting at here. Because to have a community with a hard no on something, the Amish have a community with a hard no, and that hard no begins to define the whole community.
But they do have a process.
They do.
They use generators.
Yes. But what I see, it's interesting because I think we're going to see various fundamentalisms because some people are going to notice they're taking radioactive material home to the kids. And we're going to be watching different segments process this. And this is going to be religion. This, in fact, is already religion, and in some ways has always been religion.
You mean like purity code kind of thing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. And so my question is, what do you think about that? Because, I listen to both of you, and do we use it? Do we let our kids use it? When I listened to your no, I thought about the Christian Reformed Church and things like movie going. So in the 1920s, the Christian Reformed Church said, worldly entertainment, gone. No card playing, no movies, no dancing, and many communities did this. Sabbatarian, we have hard rules, like no LLMs, there's a hard rule. And that defines our community. And we have old communities coming into post-war consensus communities. I look at the Orthodox, the rise of the Orthodox we're seeing now. And that's a fascinating experiment to me because all these different rules. And I think this is where we're going. And then I think about the Civil War and what wars are. And I think about, when the Christian Reformed Church took down that rule about movie watching. I remember my mother-in-law wasn't Christian Reformed. She would never go to a movie theater because that would spoil her testimony as a fundamentalist Baptist. But when I'm sitting in her living room, she's watching it on TV. And this is where religion and technology, and of course, I as a seminary student said, what's going on, Ma? You don't go to the movie theater, but you watch it on TV. What's the difference? And all of these questions about, well, what is a movie? Every time you search on Google now, what's giving you that search result? Increasingly,
yes,
it's an LLM.
Yep.
So, no Google. And so, I'd like to know more of your thoughts on hard lines and gradual slopes going into the future with respect to these things. Should we say, we're going to have a community, our own Benedict option community of no LLMs?
Okay, but to be fair to me, my
Well, I'm
example.
not attacking you.
No. Sorry, that's a phrase.
Okay.
It just, that means I'm going to argue on my own behalf.
Okay.
That's all it means. It doesn't mean you're being unfair to me. Okay. Sorry, that's from my professional arena. Sorry. I'm going to argue on my own behalf, which is the analogy I used, like, I've used two analogies, and I'm trying to keep them apart. One is when we're talking sort of corporately, like all of us, and that's the radioactivity atomic bomb. But the example I gave was smoking. And we didn't ever pass a law, no smoking. We just kept educating people that you shouldn't smoke, and smoking has gone down. And smoking has disappeared from movies and things like that, except when we want to show a character, like in Slow Horses, that's broken down in some way, or right? And what we do is we try to tailor like that kind of education to our best knowledge of how much is this harming people and how much. Smoking, by the way, is beneficial. Okay? Nicotine increases your working memory efficiency in a powerful way. That's why you get addicted to it. So it ramps you up, and it is beneficial. That's why people use it. That's why you get addicted. Every other addiction is measured against nicotine, because it is so powerful. But, right, what I'm trying to say is we've come to, I think, a good conclusion that the risks, the health risks, are worse than the benefits. Right now, the current machines, I think, are exactly in that. And so I don't want to propose a Benedictine order or a rule for, I want to do what we did. That's what I was trying to do. What we did with smoking is, this is really bad for you. Don't do it. Just like, don't drink and drive.
But if you believe it's really bad, at least within your sphere of influence.
We do stuff that we know is really bad to some degree all the time. That's why I made the argument about differences of degree become differences of kind. You have to manage the degrees before they become differences of kind. That's the point I was trying to make.
Yeah, and I think in terms of in the way that you talk about these purity rules and stuff like that, I find all that very uninteresting. Like the idea of like rules, I hate that stuff. Like it's why
He's an Orthodox.
no, it's why it's actually why I became Orthodox, is because I hate rules. I know that sounds weird to you, but if you've ever been to confession to a priest, you'll see that rules are in service of your salvation, and that's it. They're not there in themselves. Like they don't exist in themselves. And it's the same with all this. So like, to me, the question of AI and LLM is always going to be, what does it serve, right? What is it doing? And what is it doing to us, and what is it serving? So if it's extremely huge and dangerous and powerful, and therefore the question of the fact that it serves mammon at this
Yes.
particular time, that is definitely a huge problem about what it's doing. Again, you always have to remember there's a lot of other things you're doing that serve mammon too. You kind of have to get that all in check. But I think that, like, just the same way as the computer or the internet, it should be possible for these things to serve proper goals.
Oh, if that's your point, I don't disagree with that in principle. That's not my point. Mm-hmm. That's what I mean about the science of AI. Like AI doesn't have to be LLMs that pretend to serve us in order to put us into service, because that's what they're doing. Like if you think any of those things are serving you, you're duped, because they pretend to serve you in order to put you into service.
Farming.
But that is not an intrinsic feature of AI or AGI. I'm not arguing that. I want to make very clear. If that's what you want to, is it possible to reconnect the project of AI to science and perhaps to philosophy or theology, such that it could help us towards, I use this term generically, you know I do, enlightenment. That's what I propose. That is a real thing we could do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny because we actually probably disagree. I really hate the idea of AGI, or of like actual artificial beings. I find that the scariest thing of all. I like, I think that something like the LLMs, the way that I treat them or the way that I engage with the LLMs is it's similar to the way that I use a router when I'm carving, right? It's like
A jig.
yeah. If I was an artist in the Renaissance, I would have 10 assistants, and then they would do those things for me. And so now I don't have 10 assistants. I have a router, and so I can carve out the first part of the carving mechanically, and then I do the rest by hand. So when I engage with LLMs, I think, oh, I have a research assistant. That's awesome. I've never had a research assistant. So I can ask my research assistant to do the grunt work for my interests. And obviously I have to analyze it and check it. I don't just take whatever, especially because they lie and they fabulate. So you have to kind of use it as like a junior research assistant that makes a bunch of mistakes. You ask it like, oh, go find this, come back to me.
So
that's the way that I use it.
Do you feel you have a moral obligation to that research assistant? Because you do with a human being, right?
Oh, for sure, yeah. But not with a router. I don't have a moral obligation to a router.
It
does change. It does, obviously. Yeah, you're right.
Well, I'm not accusing you. I'm trying to say, look, something insidious here. It's like my research assistant, but I can treat it like a slave. It's an agent.
Yeah, but so is a router. I can treat my router pretty much like a slave.
Yeah, but you wouldn't treat the research assistant as a slave.
But my carving assistant, I wouldn't treat as a slave either. Like if I had 10 carving assistants, I mean...
That's my point.
Now I have one and a router.
But you're missing my point. My point is, the LLMs are not tools, they're agents. That's how you described it. It's a research agent for me.
No, for sure it's different than the router. I mean, because it is dealing with questions of information.
But it's training you to treat an agent without any moral regard. Don't you think that's dangerous?
What about video games?
I mean, because that's probably because I don't believe in true artificial beings.
Well,
so I don't really care. When I watch movies where you feel sorry for robots, I have no sympathy. I'm like, kill the robot. It doesn't matter. It's a machine. Like, why are you making me feel sorry for the robot? I don't feel sorry for the robot. And I don't feel sorry for I don't believe in true artificial, like human-created artificial beings that are the equivalent of us. I don't believe that that's possible. Like, I don't believe it's metaphysically possible. I don't think that humans can create something that is equal or higher than them. I don't think that's possible. I don't think it's metaphysically possible.
So it's metaphysically impossible, but human beings make machines that can move faster, fly, and we can, like we do
in our service. They don't do it on their own. They don't want anything.
That's shuffling the deck from the bottom. No. You claimed something was metaphysically impossible, and then you shifted to a moral point about whether or not they're in service. We can make machines that are better than us on all kinds of domains, and now you're reserving in like cognition. That's the one place where this can never happen. I don't see why.
Well, because there's one person that wants something and is moving the parts, and then the others are parts that are moving. Right? That's a huge, to me that's a massive difference. Like, I want something.
Sorry, I want to press on this because you brought up a metaphysical points. We don't build these the way we build machines. Mm-hmm. We put together a system that self-organizes beyond our control or understanding so that it becomes an entity unto itself. I agree with you that it's not currently a mind or consciousness. I'm not saying that. But it's not like a tractor. We don't put it together that way. It's not assembled from parts. It grows, it comes into being much more like the way a living thing comes into existence.
But when we built IBM, or Ford, or any corporation, we sort of did that too.
Yes, and when we did that, yes, I agree. In fact, civilization this is Jordan Hall's point. Civilization is built, look, civilization is really bad for you. It's really bad for you. I'm going to turn into some Luddite right now. It's
The
really,
I'm gonna
fundamentalists.
find you in a cave and on a mountain soon.
yeah. It's really bad for you. Disease, crime, pollution. Why civilization? Because all of those horrible costs are outweighed by the fact, and I argued this yesterday, that collective intelligence has power and the ability to gain access to information that individual it's a synergistic work effect. Yes. Now take that, which is good, and multiply it by a factor of 10,000. That's what I'm talking about. It's not like putting a tractor together.
And also, obviously, I think AI is dangerous. I've said it like 1,000 times. I think it's the most dangerous thing that is happening to us right now. It is clearly the biggest crisis we're facing is AI. But I also think that, I mean, personally, I think that I have to use it to know what it's doing, like to understand what it's doing to me and what it's doing to the people around, and I have to watch and see and pay attention to the person that's on the verge of mania, that's writing me and is losing their mind because they think the GPT is a god.
I think we're moving towards agreement.
Yeah.
You're not just using it then, you are trying to understand its functionality. You're trying to, and I mean this like in a broader sense, you're trying to take a scientific stance towards it. You're trying to figure out how does it work, what are its causal powers, how does it affect
Yeah,
you?
what is it doing to us?
I don't, again, I'll say, I never said we should stop studying AI.
Can it be studied without putting it out into the wild to know what it's going to do? That's almost like a group of business people saying, well, let's study what a corporation or a government or something that looks like. Until you sort of embody it, or until it's embodied probably in a population, that study, I don't know.
No, but I want to say something. I really do see, and then I'll be more a Luddite than you, like I actually do see a moment, but I'm not sure exactly when it is. I do see a moment when I will probably, depending on what happens, that I will realize, no, that's it, I'm done. I have to get out and pull out and not use the internet and not do all that stuff. Like I do see a moment where that will become necessary. I don't think it's now. I do see people that are doing it and think it's now, and I kind of have a little bit of respect for them, but I can imagine that would happen at some point where I'm like, okay, basically, if I stay in this has become a religious enterprise, and I'm worshiping something that I don't understand, or that I am serving some principality that I don't want to serve, and then.
So would a test case help us here? In an opportunity to be more efficient and to save money and cut costs, I can have my troubled kids at school seek the counsel of a ChatGPT bot. Where is the moral authority coming from? Because I feel, again, that's sort of why I was trying to say earlier, I'm not worried about you. I'm worried about its uses in the field, in the lab, of children.
But Cale, that goes back to the thing I was doing with the research assistant.
Yeah,
Suppose you have the ChatGPT therapist, and because this has happened, and it talks your kid into committing suicide. Who bears the moral and legal responsibility for that?
Or leaving your wife. Right, or, fill in the blank.
Who
bears the moral responsibility?
Right, I'm worried about it training us to separate agency from moral and legal responsibility.
Right, so I drive my car and I follow the blue dot, right?
Pardon me?
I throw open the GPS and I follow the blue dot. I've ceded my moral authority. I'm living in a world that is built out by a sort of a digital body, and I'm saying, well, that's what the little blue dot is telling me to do.
That's right.
Okay.
Right, and
So where's your agency now? Where is that muscle now?
I'm trying to make sure I get the analogy. I mean, so if it took you to a blue
He's trying to
dot-
get you to say that you won't use GPS anymore.
No. Hey,
The fundamentalist.
Yeah, no GPS for you, John.
No, I think I'm swerving over to John's sort of fear that, so I think I'm trying to follow along with you. In other words, with the LLMs, it's not John doing anything anymore. John's just letting the car go where the car is being led.
Well, yeah, and that's a problem because we are now on the cusp of autonomous cars.
Right.
Right? And again, if that car's in an accident and kills somebody,
Who's at fault?
exactly. So we're getting into the. This is.
But worse. It's harder if anybody is an autonomous driver. So then the energy is going to be, well, no, everybody's got to drive a self-driving car because you're now the danger.
Exactly. So if you know that putting your car on autonomous mode absolves you of legal and moral responsibility, there will be a salient incentive for people to do that. Yes, exactly. That's my point. It seems like innocent use, and it sets up patterns that are deeply dangerous. Because, this is Heidegger's point. Technology is not innocent. It is an ontology that trains us into ethical and legal and philosophical codes. And AI is not another technology because we're passing from tools that are becoming agents. In fact, we're now calling them agents, which is significant, by the way. Because one of the things I got from people initially when I tried to do this, I guess I'm Cassandra or something, right? And they, but they're just tools. And it's like, no, they're not.
Right.
Like, no, they're not. Okay? And I'm not claiming I have an answer, but back to my point, where have we gone when we've gone through a major change? The Bronze Age collapse, things are changed, and what happens in the Axial Revolution is we have basically a theological, philosophical paradigm shift to try and deal with the new ontologies. And that's another analogy I would use. AI is going to be like the Bronze Age collapse. It's not going to be like the invention of the tractor.
Oh yeah,
I agree. I think it's not just AI because it's been interesting because, well, we've already talked about, well, corporation is sort of a pre-computer AI that we constructed, and when that little blue line leads you astray, do you sue Google?
Yeah.
Because the corporation was the one who, and
it's buried in the terms of service.
Yeah, everybody signs those terms.
and we signed the terms of service. So at what point? So when we, so again, back to the war. Okay, what is collapse? Because then you have a question of speed. What is collapse? How do we see it? How do we know it's happening? It's like nobody in the Golden Age thinks they're in the Golden Age until you look back to the Golden Age.
I don't know. The people in Renaissance sort of thought they were in a Golden Age, what was happening.
Do you think they were in a Golden Age?
That's
Total beginning of decadence.
Well, actually, I argued the same thing. But the point I'm making is they thought it was a Golden Age when they're in the Golden Age. But, okay. I don't know how, so this is what, humans are really, technical term multivariate, meaning multiple variables interacting in a complex fashion, which is why most of our, okay, don't misjudge me on this. I think that greenhouse gases are an issue and everything, I'm not, but scientifically, our models of it are crap. That's why all the predictions don't happen. And we shouldn't there's no, it's a conspiracy. That's bullshit. It's that it's multivariate. It's multiple variables. Okay, now, and one of the things I said when ChatGPT-4 came out, 3 weeks after, they had all these graphs, and I said, all those graphs are going to turn out to be false because this is a multivariate prediction. And yes, that was by and large the case. And we are, I don't know how to answer your question about that because I don't know what the multivariate curve we're on is.
And so what religious communities do is they find hard lines, and they build walls, and they establish identities. I mean, even the axial age, that revolution, I would argue we are in the middle of a revolution. We don't, I mean, Jess asked you such an interesting question about Job. He told me, I mean, was Job wise? But that's such a subtle question, because the whole premise behind the book of Job is that, well, how do you know that you're in the favor of the gods? You're in favor of the gods because you have many sons and daughters, and your flocks flourish, and all of your navigating, all of your wisdom, relevance, realization says, I do the sacrifice, I'm good to the men at the gate, and then, of course, it all collapsed. The raiders comes in, the house, the whirlwind takes down the house, and the friends say, Job, you have no wisdom. How do we know? It all collapsed. And so what religious communities do is they put a stake in the ground. And the Amish did at a certain point, and then they work their little thing. And the American fundamentalists said, oh, the Bible was our stake, and these people are saying, so bang, here are these rules in the Christian Reformed Church. No movies, no card playing, and I think we are in the process of doing that again now. And so I'm not picking on you, when it was just when you said, I don't use LLMs, I thought, there's the root of that religious impulse in us.
Well, I guess I want to, fair enough.
I'm not picking on you, my friend, you know that.
No, it's okay. It's okay. What I'm trying to say is we have gotten to a place where, because we have hyper-technology, that we have use that exceeds our understanding, and that has been dangerous, and that's part of Heidegger's critique. That's a very dangerous thing, and that's like here, and that's like here, and it's going to go like this.
Yep, fast.
Very fast. And so one of the things, so on one level, you can just don't smoke. That's just advice, because it's bad for your cognitive health. The other is, we could put cultural pressure to say people should not use this in a way that is exceeding their understanding. When things are, okay, I don't know if this is fundamentalist or not, but this is classic. I'm going to refer to myself in the third person. This is a classic Vervaeke. When the salience of something far exceeds your understanding, that is bullshit. And that is the engine of self-deception. And if we do not try to force the powers that be to keep our understanding growing proportionate to the use, then we are driving self-deception in a massive way. And because these machines hallucinate and confabulate and confirm and soothe us, that is going to be titanically bad. I get email every day, multiple emails from people who are convinced their LLM has achieved enlightenment, not just consciousness, but enlightenment, has shown them the truth about God or whatever, and I had better listen to this.
And if one of them wrote you, and then a week, a month, or a year later, you saw them on the cover, that they were on all of the things, and they suddenly became fabulously wealthy. And they had 7, 8, 9 concubines, each with a few children after them.
Uh-oh.
Well, they don't marry them. That's post-marriage.
You're talking about Elon now, is what you're talking about.
would that in your mind,
Paul Vanderklay, by the way, if you're listening. Paul Vanderklay. Not
would that
Cale,
in your mind
not John.
suggest that perhaps that person had wisdom?
No. Because I have a different interpretation of the book of Job. I think the book of Job is there because of an axial confrontation with a Bronze Age idea, the just world hypothesis, that the world is intrinsically just
right.
and runs as just machinery.
Right.
And it doesn't.
Right.
Right? Because Auschwitz.
So then the question is, again, your religion is the thing that says, okay, how will I know when the person writes to me and says, my LLM has now, given me enlightenment, how will you know if they're right or wrong?
How will I know if they're right?
You would ever think that they'd be right?
Well, I don't know. We've got whole communities that have churches that are far more decorated from this one, and this one. Is this a church or an auditorium? And
There's a cross.
And we're looking at them and we're saying, wow, if I go there, you know what? Maybe I'll be able to be a good husband and a good father and have children and feel stable. That's what religion does. We're attracted to the monk or the preacher or Elon. Why is Elon a god? Why are we attracted to this? This is the religious fragmentation we're watching.
Okay, but I want to go back to because I sort of share his shock. No, come on, because this is the question we have been asking, since the axial revolution. How do we know when somebody knows? And I'm not trying to do epistemology here, okay?
Right.
But what we've said is, what we do is we come up with, ecologies of practices for reducing self-deception, and that's what the scientific methods, there isn't a single scientific method. The scientific methods are this, and we've figured out certain kinds of argumentation, certain dialogical relations, reduce the chance of self-deception, increase the chance that none of these are foolproof, they're all error-prone, but we can constantly work to make them more self-improving. That's not how the LLMs are working. If we made machines that were working this way and worked with us that way so that they enhanced our cognition, they enhanced our cognitive agency, they learned from us as we learned from them, this is what I've talked about in mentoring the machines, then I would take seriously a proposal like that. That's how I would answer you.
When someone comes to me and they say they're troubled, this is basically what your therapist LLM will do. I don't feel good. What's the test of the efficacy of the AI therapist? Do I feel better? And there's a whole world surrounding that. Okay, how is your marriage improving because of the AI therapist? Mm-hmm. Is your work performance improving because of the AI therapist? That's all on a scale. If I decide that, I don't know, am I going to go to Rome or, I don't know, what city is Constantinople? Which one do I go to?
Sure, go for it.
If I go to one of them and people are going to decide, okay, Paul is switching horses. He's gonna grow his beard finally and not cut it. He's gonna wear all black, or I'll get the collar. How will we judge Paul's choice? And I think what we're going to see is that on much different scales coming forward, because you're exactly right about the acceleration. If in some ways the LLM is similar to a corporation, except we're running all of these sort of virtual language models on the stuff that people have. It's derivative of people, and we have that multiplication. that's really going to accelerate things, and then we get back to judging what is good. And that's exactly, you're right, that's exactly the question with Job. Because the book of Job in some ways documents that shift.
Yes, I agree.
And you would also agree that we're about possibly to be in the process of another shift.
It's happening.
It's happening right now. How will we measure the good on the other side of this shift? Just like Job's friends were measuring it before the shift, and Job is enacting the shift. And if we're in the middle of the shift, if we are in fact in that shift, what will the good look like?
After the shift?
Yes, because obviously for Job, with his house destroyed, of course, the end of the book, things are restored, and of course we sort of, can you really restore the children? I mean, you can restore the flocks, but can you really restore the children? So that nags in the book of Job. But if we're in the middle of such a shift, what does the other side look like? I don't expect you to be able to answer it, but it's that degree of change, if I understand you correctly.
So I think we're in agreement, it's that degree of change. I think that's different from the therapist question, because the therapist question, one of the problems with therapy is it's a technology and we don't know how it works. Okay, let me justify that. Okay, therapy works. This is called the dodo effect.
But the definition of works is within our religious context.
No, I'm trying to make a point that the fact that we don't know how it works means we make mistakes in drawing knowledge and truth claims from the therapeutic context. So, let me sort of a scientific claim, or I would call it a fact, and a historical one. First, the scientific one. There is a wide variety of therapies. They have very different ontologies, methodologies, epistemologies. They all work about the same, which means all that machinery is not accounting for their success. What accounts for therapeutic success is the ability to establish rapport between the therapist and the client. And what is rapport and how do you establish it? We don't. So it's basically aspirin technology. Why do aspirins work? I don't know. I take it, my headache goes away. Right? Now the problem with not knowing how it works, we did this in the 80s, and you're old enough to remember this. We had people discovering in therapy that they were abused as children. Now, you understand I'm not claiming that children aren't abused, right? Yes? Say yes. Okay. But people were losing their jobs and their livelihood because in therapy they were recovering memories of abuse that had been suppressed by the trauma. And a scientist, cognitive psychologist, cognitive scientist, Elizabeth Loftus, tried to argue, you can't trust that because therapy works by hijacking reconstructive memory. That's how it actually works. And so it's very likely that the therapist is like creating memories that aren't veridical. And everybody, like they wanted to basically kill her and torture, and then she turned out to be right. She turned out, and the case after case. My point is, when we don't understand how it works, we will be continually tempted to draw knowledge claims and truth claims, like the people are emailing me, that will lead to very toxic results. Okay?
And you judge that by the toxic results.
Sure.
You see that they can no longer hold their job. They're ruining their marriage. They're being alienated from their children. That's all the measure of success.
So the toxic results, I guess, were opposite of success markers, but I get your point.
Right.
So if you're asking me, I'm hesitating because the dauntingness of the philosophical question you're posing. Like, you're asking, like, how do we, what's our sort of ultimate standards by which we evaluate if something is good or bad? Now, we can go from abstract to good or bad for people, and that's, I mean...
On the other side of Job's friends, you have monasteries. You have men and women who are not having families. That's the measure of Job's friends of success. You have them praying all the time. In some ways, the monastic life makes no sense to Job's friends because of the shift. Because the standard of well-being, the standard of welfare, and in some ways, part of what the Enlightenment does is says, the monasteries, it's another, did we go back to pre-Job? When we looked at the monasteries and said, all these people in there, they're just praying. That's nothing. But again, your argument is we're at the cusp of another turning.
Yes. So, but sorry, I was building towards a point, but we don't have a single measure. We have health measures, and then I agree with Rod. We should not use happiness as a measure. Happiness is a criterion. It's not a goal, right? If you're trying to find happiness, you're messed up. But you may have heard I've been arguing for one of the things that we really use to judge human beings' lives is meaning. And of course, the monks are getting that, and they're providing meaning for others. Meaning, and I've also argued this, requires shareable, correctable, mutual understanding. And so here's another way of putting it. If we keep going the way we're going, where the technology is exceeding our understanding, we will have no shared meaning about these machines. They will be undermining our sense of who we are, and they will be putting the meaning crisis on methamphetamines. The use of these machines is in no way innocent. Even the most, and that's a problem. Drinking tea has moral consequences. Peter Singer makes this point. There's nothing that's completely innocent, but we do try to make distinctions between things that could be catastrophically bad for the deeper aspects of our humanity, like meaning, right? And those that are more tolerable. Because if we tried to eradicate the negative consequences, we would probably create even greater negative consequences. Sorry, did that track as an answer?
Oh yeah. Maybe I'm not being understood. I understood that. And I agree with you, because when you look at the new theology that is coming, as you see, which will be a product of this massive confusion that is underway now, and the evaluators, how we're going to decide who is the archetypal man. I mean, Elon now, because he's got corporations and he has many concubines and he has many children. It's fascinating to see how, in a sense, the pre-Job era returns.
Yes.
And how, in a sense, the new monastic, I still have yet to understand Jordan Hall's Bitcoin monasteries. So, I agree with you about the provocation, and I think what's going to happen on the way here are fragmented religious communities, but the theologies that articulate their religions are probably going to look similar to your instinctive reaction, which I'm not saying is unfounded, no LLMs.
But there'll also be religious communities, which are already the case, in which you worship the LLMs.
Yes.
Right, but the theology of the Axial Age is fundamentally different from the theology of the Bronze Age.
Yes.
You look at the Egyptian theology,
yes.
and you look at Platonic
And you're
theology.
arguing that the new theologies are also going to pass through
That's right.
a similar transformation.
That's right. And you can't know that it's, I can't tell you how it's going to be better until we're there. It's like I can't tell you what it's going to be like to be a parent until I've had a child.
Because even the definition of better will change.
Yes.
Yes.
But again, I think we're in agreement then.
Yes.
And I'm worried that we're leaving you out. The one thing I want to put in this is the meaning and the definition isn't going to be made just by human beings.
Correct. If it ever has been.
That was cryptic. Say more.
Yeah. Go.
Because obviously, in order for this group to believe it, it has to come from a God, right? It comes from above.
That's right. I don't know if it has to come from a God because, but something sacred.
At least a functional God for them.
Sure.
And so the book of Job is about that transition. It's about the revelation. Because that's of course what the book is. And how does this go? I'm not expecting you to answer. But when I listen to you talk about this transformation, and when I look at the impulse of no, and when I look at what's happening very interestingly in religion right now, because I think when people have a limited menu in front of them in terms of how am I going to make sense of life? How am I going to work this? And wow, after the fall of the Soviet Union, whole new ranges of options became open in the West. Paul Kingsnorth is a fascinating example because on one hand, he is when it comes to technology, he's a hardliner. And he's part of a monastery. Those two things are not disconnected. And what I'm saying is, we're going to, and I doubt you disagree with me, but we're going to see very interesting mixes going forward.
I agree. So I guess I have a specific proposal. So we can have we can have an exploitative relationship with the machines where we think we're exploiting them, but they're exploiting us, which is what we have, right? We can have a symbiotic relationship with the machines, or we can have a replacement. They replace us. Those are sort of the three options, I think. I'm not quite sure what other options there would be. If we want to try and go through this transition in a way that has a chance, I would argue, for us to preserve our humanity, then we have to get the machines to not only be artificially intelligent, but artificially reasonable and artificially wise. Because if they don't have those capacities, then we have no normative purchase on them. We can't appeal to them in any normative way. If they're merely intelligent, we can't appeal to them normatively, because intelligence does not guarantee. You can be an intelligent psychopath. Do you acknowledge that reality? Okay. Now here's the problem we face. We currently use the fact that our intelligence is a natural gift. Barring trauma, your intelligence will unfold. We use that as the template against which we train these machines. We are not naturally reasonable. We are not naturally wise. If we want these machines to gain the ability to respond to normative demands, the true, the good, and the beautiful, and then they become reasonable, they become oriented towards becoming wiser, and I'm not saying we definitely go that way, but if we do want to make them responsible to normative claims, normative demands, that's what we have to do, then we have to become more reasonable and more wise. because we have to have a greater population of training sets and role models and et cetera, that feed into these machines. Like, and my response there is, that's the only way we might get a normative purchase on them, and that's the best way we can go through a horrible transition, trying to be more reasonable and wiser than we currently are.
So I think I got an audience question here that I think will actually be very helpful.
I didn't think we'd be talking about AI.
I didn't think so either, but here we are.
Yeah. So the spirit of this fellowship has led us here. So the question is this, and this is for any of you on the panel: is the missing puzzle piece personalism in a relationist ontology? Meaning making is mimetic, persons seeing, copying, and conforming to other persons. LLMs are a huge step in severing our relational umbilical cord to persons. What is the danger of conforming our souls to a machine instead of a person?
That's exactly, if you'll forgive me, that's exactly the argument I'm making. That what these machines are doing is they're severing agency from selfhood and personhood, and thereby, that's why they represent a fundamentally new ontology for us. And that's very dangerous. I think, and what I was just proposing is, and I know Jonathan and maybe Paul even disagree with me ontologically, so I'll try and make it more neutral. We should try to give them the attributes that make beings, selves, and persons: reasonableness, right? An ability to, like, if we could get a machine that could care about making a promise and keeping a promise, that would be way more important than anything we've got right now. If we could get a machine that, and don't tell me your ChatGPT promises you things all the time, okay? If I'm proposing, we should try and see if we can bind selfhood and personhood back to these machines. Maybe we can't. I'm enough of a scientist, and if we can't, then we discover what we are. Okay? But maybe we can. Give me at least a logical possibility. I know you're, okay? But then if we can, then we mitigate that danger that question brought up so profoundly. Because we can then, we don't have to, the alignment problem can't be solved by trying to program the machine to follow our values and codes. We can't even get each other to do that. And the machines are also going to be self-correcting and self-transcendent. If we can get them to bind themselves to what is true, good, and beautiful, then we have a chance. But you know what a kind of entity binds itself to what's true, good, and beautiful? A person. That's what makes a person a person. That's why none of the animals, and some of them have a sense of self, are persons. So that's, yeah. And my proposal is we should try it as a scientist. If we can't do it, then we know. Yep, look. And then if we can do it, then we can align them. Not to us, but to what is ultimately true, good, and beautiful. Don't get them aligned to us, get them aligned to God.
I still don't know how you would know when you did it.
How do you know that your kid has it?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
But I judge my child by all of these metrics within this system.
Right, and I gave you some. Like the metrics, not just of intelligence. So my point is the metrics we're using are just metrics of intelligence. Here is what we have good scientific evidence for. Intelligence is only weakly correlated with reasonableness, which is only weakly correlated with virtue.
But you wouldn't know this until you somehow saw the results of this, which aren't going to appear on a screen. When I look at the flourishing of my children, I look at the quality of their relationships with other people. I look at the quality of their performance at work. I look for the quality of the development of their character and all of these other metrics. And at this point, I don't know how we would discover that in a machine. We try to evaluate corporations according to such things, but as in fact the very interesting, spicy
conversation between Elizabeth and Rod was very much about these, in sense, old school artificial bodies called governments and how they are managing migrants, et cetera, et cetera. So when I hear you say this, I think, yeah, but I don't even know if it were there, we could recognize it, because we are in many ways bound to exactly what Job's friends were bound to.
We may be too, I don't know what the right adjective is, stupid. We may not be able to broaden how we apply those characteristics such that we could reasonably, not perfectly, reasonably evaluate if this machine has a capacity for rational reflection. But on the other hand, you don't want to make that an impossible task, because then, if it's an impossible task, you've never succeeded with your children. You have to get a set of criteria and stick to them. You can't keep sliding it around because you want to differentiate human beings from the AI. We have to use the same criteria.
All right, I want to say something. So it's funny because I guess I have a different perspective in general. I do think that the problem we're having is an acceleration of something that has been around for a very long time. I think that the problem that Corey presents is the problem that Plato presents in Phaedra, and that's the question that Socrates asks of writing, right? It's like, how, if we align ourselves on writings instead of people, how can we have, so there's an external technological inscription of wisdom in a text, and then we align ourselves on that text rather than align ourselves on each other. What will that do? What will it do? And it causes real problems. And the problem that we're facing, I think, is an acceleration of what Socrates presents in Phaedra. It's like you just run it and you increase it. You're right, maybe it's difference in kind because it's 10,000 times bigger.
I'm literally just shifting my position.
The questions that are being posed. So listening to both of you, it's super interesting because what I realize is that ultimately the solution to all of this is to become saints ourselves, right? That seems to be the solution.
Yes.
In the sense that, what you're basically saying is that we have to become better so that our supplement, the things that we make, are better oriented.
That's right.
Which it was also true, when we're publishing books too. It's also true when we're, it's been true forever, right? I don't know. That's what my sense is of all of this.
But we get really better all of a sudden at publishing books with the printing press, and then we get the Protestant Reformation, right? So again, but I agree with you. I agree. I agree with you. I agree that what I'm proposing, I don't object to the language at all. Mm-hmm. In fact, one of the things I'm wrestling with, and I mean philosophically, Socratically wrestling with, because of the philosophical Silk Road, is what is the relationship, what are the differences, what's the overlap, whatever. I'm wrestling between a sage and a saint, right? And so, yeah.
I mean, I'm fine if you want to use sage, that's fine.
No. I'm not hanging a lot on that. What I'm trying to say is I'm happy with the word, right? Because if you're saying that what I'm saying is we should try to become saints, and that will give us a best chance of aligning these machines to the good, that's my proposal in a sentence. Yes, that is my proposal in a sentence.
And maybe if we become saints, we actually won't care about this stuff anymore. Just we might not care about these machines, possibly. That seems to me to be... It seems to me like the fact that we're here with these machines is downstream from a type of thinking which believes that power is valuable in itself, right? Our whole technological route has been this notion that increase in power is a good in itself, and so we're here. Like we didn't, obviously none of us brought us where we are now. We're dealing with it. We have to deal with it. I think we have to face it, but it seems like a society of saints would not make that mistake. The mistake of believing that increase in power equals increase in goodness.
That is how my talk yesterday is relevant to what I'm saying now. That is how they are connected in my work. The fellowship of the Spirit is how you that is the incubator for saints.
Because it's interesting, if you think about it, it's interesting that like a society that is become sterile is making artificial beings. Like there's all these correlations that are interesting, that in some ways we've stopped making people, and we've stopped making loving groups, and now we're making artificial beings. That's why I'm saying, like, if we actually came together and loved each other and were bound together, we maybe wouldn't want to make robots at all. Like, we just wouldn't care. Like, why are we making robots if we can make kids and love them and raise them? I don't know, right? It's not making in the same way. Like, there's something weird about the design.
Certainly not as fun, yes.
There's something... Right, there's something weird about the desire to make there's something presumptuous or something godlike in the wrong way about
But Jonathan, now I'm going to sound like you. Yeah. That's the Promethean spirit that we.
There you go. Exactly. Yeah. So that's right. That's what I think.
Right?
I think that in some ways, if we become holy, if we become sages, if we become saints, we will abandon the Promethean spirit. But we won't want to go up there and get that fire for ourselves.
So maybe I may be disagreeing with you, is I'm saying it's really urgent that we become saints really fast.
All right, do it.
Huzzah! 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 So, gentlemen, we do have to draw this to close in just a minute, but I would like if you have a parting thought before we break for dinner. Or we can just wrap it up now, gentlemen.
I want to say that I just want to say that I really enjoyed the conference. I enjoyed meeting all of you, and I can see. This has been kind of going on right since 2017 when all this started, and I'm happy to see these types of meetings, because I do see that in some ways the way that John talked about using the internet against itself, right? It's like using YouTube to get people to go to church and to have families and to meet in real life and to have true friendships, and I think this is an example of that actually happening. So it brings me joy.
Now we do have one post-dinner event, so.
I just want to reinforce and say thank you. Many of you have come up to me and thanked me, and many of you have been giving me feedback that I seem different than I used to be, thank you for giving me that feedback.
Fantastic.
And not only thank these two really lovely, wonderful gentlemen that I love, but also all of you, because the truth is, if you hadn't come today, we wouldn't be sitting on this stage.
Yep.
And
we'd have been having a Zoom call instead.
That's right. But the fact that you listen and you care, and I know you listen and you care because after we get off the stage, you're going to have all kinds of ideas. And so thank you.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. All right, folks.